speaking of motivation, motivation is a key contributor to medication adherence and following the protocol. So talk a little bit about the challenge of medication adherence, especially once that initial burst of motivation has worn off.
That's right. Of course, one of the when people are often criticizing the Sinclair Method or raising questions about it, ultimately they seem to feel that a checkmate has been made by acknowledging that yes, you do have to choose to take the medication at some point. I mean, there is some element of choice. It's not a 100% passive activity. You're going to need to take that medication 100% of the time, 100.0% of the time without exceptions prior to drinking. So there is a motivation element there, especially at the beginning of treatment. I think it's really when we talk about kind of strategies or tips or kind of how to think about what's going on. You really want to think about this the initiation phase. The person's starting this medication, say, to the first 2 to 4 weeks, versus what I would just call the pre-extinction stage. They're still actively drinking, still having some cravings, still, and then post-extinction. Once that craving and interest has really faded to the background, it's not really a part of their internal experience on a day-to-day basis. So at the beginning, yes, as you're saying, motivation can be high. One of the things that we kind of focus on, especially again, this initiation stage, is to really take the medication as early as possible when the motivation is there. Now, again, strictly speaking, 1 hour prior to the first drink, that's kind of the minimum amount of time that would be required for the drug to be kind of metabolized, for it to be in place to provide blockade of the endorphins. But at the beginning of the treatment, when that motivation can be fluctuating, and also the interest, the brain's pursuit of those endorphins is at its highest. In other words, you have an agent in your mind that is completely counter to this strategy. It doesn't want to not get those rewards. It wants that buzz. So you have this this kind of other entity in your mind that does not want this. But what we find is that usually people at the beginning of the day, when they wake up, they tend to be motivated, whether it be for the Sinclair Method or going to the gym or whatever, or eating well later on. But as the day progresses, and in this case, as you get closer and closer to that first drink, the quality of the decision making about taking the Naltrexone really deteriorates. Because your brain is actually starting to have this anticipatory excitement for the endorphins from the drink. So as you get closer and closer and closer to that first drink, the quality of the decision making goes down. So one thing that we kind of emphasize at the beginning is to really not walk such a tightrope with the 1 hour. Even though that is going to be the long-term strategy at the beginning with the fluctuating levels of motivation. Also, just remembering to take it, or this is a new thing, a new behavior that you're doing. So we really try to have it not wait until 1 hour before, do it a little bit earlier than that, so you have some room for error should you forget. And then also time it around a particular activity. It could be lunch. Lunch is often a good time just because there's a meal, there's plenty of food. And so you can set the alarm on your phone, or just even the context of lunch to remind people. But the important point is that while yes, in the long run you can do it 1 hour before, what we find is maybe a person is actually able to accomplish that 90% of the time. The first month, we'll say, which is in another kind of context, that'd be great. That'd be an A in most, if it were some kind of academic study. But 90% of the time might just not work at all with the Sinclair Method. That any kind of examples or episodes of reinforcement can really undermine the whole thing. That 90% might get you 0% of the results. So we really just focus on establishing this new habit with food. And then before your motivation deteriorates, because as you get closer to that first drink early on, it's like the lights are quite bright. Can be quite attractive.